I'm back!
Hello, I'm the Amazing Atheist, and welcome back to another video. As some of you know, I believe morality is ultimately subjective, but before we get into that, let's watch some videos and criticize other people's subjective assessments of morality.
That's pretty damn good. I mean, it nails TJ on his subjectivist approach to morality, and in only 3 panels. It's really impressive to see a comic that stands on its own like that. That being said, now that the author has my attention, it would be good to be able to find out a little bit more about his perspective. Nothing too dense, maybe just a few paragraphs further outlining the nuts and bolts of what he thinks than a 3-panel comic could ever really convey.
Like all good comic book artists, his work doesn't stand on its own because that would be fucking passe. Instead, it's got 3 dense paragraphs of text to help you understand the message.
That's a very odd response to someone giving you 2 quality works for the clicks of 1. I suppose, though, if it was your honest response, then I can't really tell you it was wrong. It's subjective, after all. Cue throwback intro! Remember that shit before you turned into a giant commie faggot? Ah, those were the days, weren't they? But I digress. Back to the comic. I want to explain why this completely fucking wrecked The Amazing Atheist. And I warn you, this one is going to get really fucking philosophical, so you have been warned. TJ really does argue against objective morality and for subjective morality. This panel also mentions the phrase ultimately subjective, which is important because TJ argues not just that we can have subjective opinions about what morality ultimately is, but that there really is no objective ultimate fact of the matter when it comes to morality. And TJ really does then go on to criticize other people's morality. The comic even phrases it other people's subjective assessments of morality, which is a phrase that accepts the subjectivity that exists with morality, but points out that this subjectivity is merely our individual attempt at understanding what is actually moral. Thus, objective morality must exist. Just like how I might have a subjective assessment about what's in this box, I might also have a subjective assessment about whether something is moral. In order for me to be right or wrong about what's in the box, there must be an objective fact about what's really in the box that either matches my assessment or doesn't. In order for me to be right or wrong about whether something is moral, there needs to be an objective fact about what is moral that either matches my assessment or doesn't. That's what being wrong is. When the model of reality in one's head doesn't match reality. If you don't believe there is an objective fact of the matter, what the hell does telling me I'm wrong about something even mean? So that's why I think it nailed you, TJ. Now, the next bit is really just drama between you and red panels, and red panels can take care of self. That's never gonna work. So let's skip ahead to paragraph 2, where we finally get back to the topic.
Here's a suggestion, TJ. Perhaps morality ought to mirror the objectivity of another mental construction, mathematics. That is, it should be universalizable and internally consistent, lacking a logically sound reason to ascribe people, moral agents, any quantifiably greater magnitude of moral authority. They would not be differentiated. As such, it would be illogical and immoral for people to delegate moral agency to others that they do not innately possess.
As far as I can tell, you think morality should be treated like math. Well, here's the problem. 2 + 2 = 4, and you can show that in a number of different ways. And it's true in almost any circumstance.
Almost.
The exceptions are things like 2 drops of water plus 2 drops of water may end up just being 1, albeit bigger, drop of water.
Jesus Christ. I don't know if that baffling misunderstanding of mathematics is particularly instrumental to your misunderstanding of morality, but I would be surprised if it didn't have some trickle-down effect. Okay. 2 + 2 = 4 has no exceptions. If you think you have found one, you are misunderstanding what a fucking equal sign means. Okay. It does not mean that 2 and 2 come together to make 4. No. It means that 2 and 2, 2 + 2, is the same number as 4. They are 2 names for the same thing. If I give you 2 plus $2, I have just given you $4. That's what it means. In your example, it means defining what a water droplet is. Let's say a group of molecules that are all touching each other, to the extent that molecules can touch. It's sort of surrounded by air. If some of the molecules are touching, then they're part of the same droplet. Then it means seeing if 2 and another 2 are the same number of droplets as 4 droplets. If those 4 droplets come together to form one droplet, then your equals sign gets a fucking line through it, and congratulations, you have proved that 2 plus 2 is not equal to 1. Jesus, Danny, do you really have to be so fucking pedantic about this, you autistic shit? Yes. It's maths, that's the point.
But 2 carrots and 2 carrots is 4 carrots. 2 tits and 2 tits is 4 tits. I'm talking about the birds, not the breasts. Don't be perverted. It's nice and clean, and it's easy and measurable.
Well, those were 3 very different adjectives. Clean, easy, measurable. You're trying to say that maths is these things, and morality is not. And you're trying to say that these things are necessary for something to be objective. Okay, well, clean. Yes, 2 plus 2 equals 4 is very clean, I suppose. It has one specific answer. Probability, however, will give you a range of answers and their likelihoods. That doesn't seem very clean. Are we now saying that probability as a part of maths is not objective? Okay, well, what about easy? You're saying maths is easy. Which, granted, some of it is, but some of it's very difficult, isn't it? Does that make maths not objective, at least once we get to the harder stuff? All right, then, well, what about measurable? Well, actually, that's the worst one, because maths is never measurable. Ever. As soon as you start measuring things, you have left maths and entered the world of science. Maths may be said to be the language of science, but maths is purely theoretical by definition. Take E equals mc squared. Energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. That's a mathematical equation. Why do we consider it to be part of science and not maths? Well, because mass is involved, for example, the speed of light. These are measurements that we take from the world and apply in the realm of our equations. Maths is logic. Science is when we apply that logic to the evidence at hand.
There is no morality arithmetic.
You have to decide right now whether 4 people die or 3 people die. You know nothing about any of these people. Which one do you pick? Well, a calculation, a moral calculation, if you will, might tell you that 4 is greater than 3. Thus, the latter option is the one that is morally correct, as it results in less death. Well, that's an oversimplified example, isn't it? Indeed it is, but so is 2 plus 2 equals 4. In the real world, there are complications which make the right answer harder to pin down, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a right answer. You might also be saying that, well, this is really just a calculation that pertains to morality. It doesn't define it. It doesn't say why killing is wrong in the first place. Okay, let's do that calculation. So, a dead person has less freedom than a living person. I mean, I don't know how you quantify freedom, but however you do it, a dead person has less of it than a living person because a dead person has 0. Any number is greater than 0. So, okay, therefore, the correct answer is we should take the course of action that results in more freedom. Well, why is freedom morally necessary? And isn't this going to result in an infinite regress? Yes, indeed it will. It is going to require at some point that we make a pragmatic assumption, but so does everything else. How do I know that I've got a beer bottle here? I mean, other than the fact that I just called a can a bottle. I can see it. Well, how do I know that I can see it? Well, my eyes relay the information to my brain. How do I know my eyes are trustworthy? And so on. At some point, I have to make a pragmatic assumption. The world is subtle and complex and confusing, and any idea we have about it is merely a subjective assessment. But that doesn't mean that there is not a world out there that we are learning about, that our subjective assessments about are not getting less and less wrong. Any idea we have about morality is also a subjective assessment in the same way.
Is it right or wrong to spank children?
In just about every case that's wrong, but your question doesn't give us enough information to be totally sure.
Is it right or wrong to get an abortion?
Definitely not enough information there.
Is it right or wrong to allow euthanasia?
Allow? Well, there are some cases in which it's justified, so we shouldn't prohibit it entirely. I mean, if that's what you mean. If that's not what you mean, then insufficient information again.
Is it right or wrong to kill a murderer?
That one's pretty much just wrong. Unless he's about to kill again, I suppose, but other than that, just information, dude.
You may have your answers to these questions.
And I do!
And so may I, but there is no universal agreement.
So if there is no universal agreement on a matter of fact, then there is no matter of fact. Is that what you're saying? Because disagreed on is not the same as subjective.
And there is no simple equation we can all defer to and say, well, we figured out the morality of abortion. We've looked at every single factor and we know 100% where human life truly gains its sentience and deserves its own rights.
True, there is no simple equation we can defer to, but there is an incredibly complicated one that we're still figuring out. You were just now bemoaning the sheer number of factors involved, and then you complain that there's no simple equation. Complicated does not equal subjective either.
You know, the funny thing about everyone who claims to have objective morality is that none of them can agree on what it is. Oh, we found it! We found objective morality, you guys! There it was. It was behind the dildo chest the whole time.
Holy shit. Just because we haven't got a perfect understanding of it at the moment means it doesn't exist. Again, disagreed on, not equal to subjective.
You know, things that are objectively true are genuinely not a source of much argument.
What?
You know, things that are objectively true are genuinely not a source of much argument.
Let's hear that again.
You know, things that are objectively true are genuinely not a source of much argument.
Oh, good. I'll just tell every scientist and mathematician in the world currently debating some hotly contested issue on the cusp of human knowledge that there is no objective answer and they should just give the fuck up. The Raymond Zeta hypothesis, string theory, no, stop that, scientists and mathematicians, you don't currently agree, there is no answer, just give it up. Jesus fuck, TJ.
Now, there are exceptions, like evolution or climate change, where people deny science based on faith and fantasy.
Yes. There are quite a lot of those exceptions, though, aren't there? I mean, history is rife with people refusing to accept scientific fact. How many exceptions until you no longer have a rule? Also, notice that my exceptions were not your exceptions. You went for situations where some people pretty definitely know the facts, and some other people are just stubbornly denying it. I went for situations at the edge of our current knowledge, where there are several different points of view, battling it out, and they all understand that there is an objective truth, and they're just trying to figure out which one it is. Also notice that your examples tend to get in the way of mine. I mean, those scientists, mathematicians, and philosophers at the cusp of human knowledge, they're not helped by those pseudo-scientific dullards that you were referencing, are they, TJ? The ones that claim that there is no objective truth, reality is all subjective, and your theory of evolution denies my personal truth of the light of Jesus! You understand that an appreciation of the existence of objective reality is important in that scenario, even if we're still learning and discussing the nature of that objective reality. Well, you are doing precisely the same thing when you insist that there is no objective morality.
2 + 2 is objectively 4. Everyone comprehending what I'm saying in this video right now is objectively a human being because no other life form that we know of is capable. If I chop off my balls and throw them in a blender, they are objectively gone forever. But whether or not it's right to get your baby circumcised, there's no objective answer to that. Only opinions, only different value systems in competition with one another. In fact, you can find objective moral people on both sides of the issue. It's objectively wrong to mutilate that poor baby. It's barbaric. Well, it's objectively wrong not to mutilate that baby. It's God's will, or it's tradition, or girls like them that way, or this'll help with disease, or whatever reasoning they give.
Maybe. Maybe it would help if I start laying out what I think an objective understanding of morality would look like. Not to say that I have all of it, or even most of it, but just like with objective reality, I think there are some things that we can pretty confidently say. Oh, and keep that analogy in mind while I go on, by the way, that one between objective reality and objective morality. Okay, here we go. When understanding reality, we might make some pragmatic assumptions like, my senses at least sometimes give me valid information about the world. Not always. We know that our senses can be fooled, but saying that our senses are always wrong puts us in the epistemological dark. So we must make an assumption there. From there, we can say some things about what is objectively true given those rather safe assumptions. We can then use our senses to observe reality and see which things are being most consistently confirmed by them. In the same way, I would make the safest assumptions possible about morality. For example, at least some of the things that people value are actually worth valuing. This isn't to say always, but saying nothing we value is worth valuing puts us in the ethical dark. So we must make an assumption there. Now, from that I can say a few things. For example, that morality must act on the level of the individual, not the collective. We experience things and value things as individuals. Many people in a collective can value the same things, but it's still the individuals in the collective doing the valuing, not the collective itself. If some of the things that we value as individuals are worth valuing, then allowing people to individually pursue what they value is a reasonable way of fulfilling those values. Now, sometimes people's values will conflict. We both know that we want to do something with, say, a stick, but we can't both achieve that thing at the same time. Well, in that case, there needs to be some way of dividing up the stuff. This is a very complex topic, but I'm yet to hear of an assessment of it in which we don't own at least our own bodies. Now, if we own our own bodies, then removing parts of people's bodies before they can consent to it is not exactly promoting that ownership, now is it? This is a broad sketch of how to get from absolutely nothing to circumcision is wrong. Yes, it missed a lot of steps, and side information that might have been pertinent. But so would a claim about reality, if I was to give you a ground-up defense of it in a few sentences. I suspect that you responded very differently to my description of how we get started learning about what is, than you did to my description about the exact same process with what ought. It's a double standard. Fix it.
I'm the Amazing Atheist. Objective morality is bullshit. Peace the fuck out.
The Amazing Atheist. Unblock me on Twitter, you cuck. Alright everybody, I just wanted to take a moment out here to announce that I now have a Patreon. Yes, I know I'm living up to the Danny is a Jew thing that I've seen people talking about. I swear I'm not, but you know, if you can't beat them, be a Jew, I guess. Your money won't entirely go on alcohol, I mean, it might, but I've got a goal for when I hit $20 a video, which is I'm going to commission some art to make my videos look a bit more professional. It's not quite enough to do that, I guess, but I'll pitch in some myself. But once I hit 20, it's really just a sign that people value my stuff enough for it to be worth pitching in some money myself. And I'll also, at that point, record some original music to go along with my videos, which should make it seem a little bit slicker and a little bit more engaging, hopefully. I swear I can do some original music that you guys will like. Well, at least I hope you'll like. Other than that, thank you to Mycroft for being my first patron. I don't know how you found out that I had a Patreon before I even fucking announced it, but whatever, man. Cheers for donating. And that's pretty much everything. I need a cool way of signing off other than get out of my shitty Honda Fit, but I really can't think of one, so... get out of my shitty Honda Fit.